Hey everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay or Jaylan Salah as you formerly know her, film critic at Geek Vibes Nation and In Session Film. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Harrison Ball, star of Catharsis, surrealistic artistic short, reminiscence on violence, bodies, and hidden trauma. Harrison, I'm so glad to talk to you today.
You too.
Okay, so since you're a dancer, I feel like dancers' bodies are like fighters. They're trained to endure the extreme levels and pressure. How do you use your body to express emotions, to express certain things, even the themes and the conflicts in the film, so that you evoke the storytelling and keep it forward?
Something I'm learning, having made this transfer from dancing to acting, is that it's not too different in the sense that, you have a set, you have costumes, you have lighting, you have all these things that contribute to a character. And, obviously my skill set is through my body, like you said, and I'm trained in this way to have hyper awareness of my instrument. So I think luckily for me, I didn't have to think too hard about how I translated a narrative through my body. I actually felt so much safer knowing that I had that just in me. I felt much more comfortable with dialogue, which is a funny thing, and something I'm also learning is it's really not even about that. It's about the living and breathing a character through their body. So, I did do a substantial amount of prep work for this character. And, luckily also Brian brought me a script where the character was so much already mirroring what was going on in my own life, leaving New York City Ballet and having these kind of esoteric questions about career and family and trauma and, all these things. So it really kind of piled up for me in this beautiful way. And, I studied punk movement quite a lot to prepare for this role. So I think once I had like an understanding of where I wanted Alex, his body to be, I could kind of just set that and forget it, and then just kind of live in the scene. So, there was 25 years of preparation for this role in the sense that I had trained my whole life to be a dancer. So the character was a dancer. So I didn't have to like depart too much, but I learned that it's something that I'll be able to probably carry with me through every role that I ever do.
Okay. So, how did you find working with Debbie Harris, Blondie? I mean, I can't even believe it. Like, how did you feel approaching this legend?
Debbie's amazing. I met Debbie through my husband, Zach Posen, who's a designer, and they went to the Met Gala together. And I, of course, was familiar with Debbie Harry. I obviously heard her music and I knew of her. But I naively didn't realize just how iconic she really was. And, I think living in New York, we can kind of get numbed to just
Celebrities.
the scale of things. Sometimes not even just the celebrity, just the scale of things, and just you meet people, and she's somebody to me who I find very disarming, and it's just hard to believe that somebody that generous and sweet has had this massive life, and has seen so much and has so much wisdom, but beyond that has so much career wisdom. And I we all share a manager, and I had seen her at some dinner, and she was talking to me about what I was up to because last time she had seen me I was talking about possibly going into acting, and I said I had this script, and she said she wanted to look at it, and then she said she wanted to do it, and I couldn't really believe it. I mean, I remember I was driving up Park Avenue, and I called her, and it says calling Debbie Harry, and I felt so almost silly, it felt like she was so out of my league. But she was amazing because I called her and I said, I just want to thank you so much for doing this. And and I said, I hope I'm not bringing you down, to my level. And I had this very self-deprecative way of speaking about myself. And she stopped me and she said, you have 25 years of 30 years of your life dedicating yourself to a craft. You know what you're doing. You're a performer. So to answer your question, she gave me so much in this very maternal way and really kind of became an aunt to me in real life, through the making of this movie. And it just was, I find for having it been my debut film, I'm so grateful to her because just even in all the preparation and all the conversations and sitting with her on a set and everything, it just was so eye-opening, and just to understand her psyche and her willingness to always just go, 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 go and work and make it about what's happening right in front of you. So it was just incredible. I actually have her hat next to me over here in my
Wow.
office.
Okay. So I want to ask you about being approached by Brian for this project. Like, I want to know how the process went.
So Brian, I met years and years ago. I used to be a real naughty boy in New York, and I met him out through mutual friends. We partied together, and then I never spoke to him after that for quite a long time. And there was a press release that came out through New York City Ballet, announcing that I was retiring as principal dancer there. And he had this script that he had um, written about a dancer leaving a ballet company, but kind of told through the story of this Russian Ukrainian background that's his own and, very personal to him. So it actually was really like more Brian's story, but like told through a dancer. And I think he's always just kind of had a fascination with dance. And he sent it to me, and it was like the star lineman, and I just, I said, of course I'll do it. And I said, there's some things I want to change, some elements that I wanted to offer him in terms of my experience as a dancer, because I can justifiably say that I know what it's like, to be there. So it was so interesting that that happened that way because he wanted to make a career shift. I was just in the beginning of that process, and he brought this script, and it just kind of was a no-brainer.
Definitely. Okay, so now that you taught me, actors usually do emotions on command. Like they cry on command, they can be fun on command, they can go shifting moods from command. And as a dancer, I think your body is commanding differently. Like you can just tap into it and order it to do something right on the spot. So, which do you find easier? The way to express your emotions through dialogues, through normal acting, or the way that your body as a dancer could do like a physical scene without any line of dialogue, like let's say an action scene, for example, well choreographed or something.
I think I don't think there's really a distinction because at the end of the day, they're both forms of storytelling. And, this like on demand thing, I think is really just like a way of saying there's technicality to performing. And it's something that I actually discovered watching the movie after we made it, where of course, naturally I'm looking at all the things that I'd like to work on. And, it was mainly that. And you know, I I'm figuring it out. Like I'm learning what my process is, and I think that's always going to be forever. I know from my dance that, we work on technique every day. Like you don't reach this point and then you can just tap out. You every day have to work on your craft. And I think acting, it is exactly the same in that sense. You have to live in that sort of dedication. This on-demand thing, I think it's really just being available to the experience, and there's no really right way. And I there were scenes that called for certain emotions, but I think if you press into things and you try to make that happen, especially even if it's demanded of you, if the director's asking you, I want this, I think really at the end of the day, it's about capturing the essence of that because, you know, I'm learning that some people just don't cry, and some people don't yell. But just because they don't do those things doesn't mean they don't express them. And I think that everybody has their own way of expressing them. And I think characters, if you're really available to what the character is telling you and what the character wants to say and what the character is experiencing, that those tears might end up being just a blank stare or whatever. It's like you can't premeditate that. Unless, of course, I think a director's asking you, like, specifically, you really have to be on this mark. But, that wasn't the case here. So
Okay. So there are some beautiful scenes that I love. They brought to mind subconscious images of the mother, the ego, the super ego, especially Alex with his mother as he navigates his subconscious. I don't know how these artistic scenes were like done, like were they described that beautifully? Did you collaborate on them? Because they were almost like paintings, like being held in someone's arms and then expressing, and each, of course, viewer would interpret it in a different way. But for me, it was also about our egos and about the kind of like the arrangement inside our psyche. But I don't know, how did you collaborate on these scenes and how did they come up so beautifully? Was it between you and Brian? Was there something else there?
Brian had a really clear idea of what that hypnosis scene was going to be. Originally, it was much bigger, it was much longer, but of course, I'm sure you're aware, shorts are very difficult because you have to distill everything into such a short period of time. I think our original cut was like over 30 minutes long, and the original idea really was that this scene would be very, very long. Of course, if it was a feature, I think it'd be half the movie, the
Yeah.
the the hypnosis scene. But there was a lot of collaboration on it. Brian definitely spearheaded it and already saw it. He knew the Pietà image was going to be there, which is actually, if you look in Alex's bedroom, there's a poster of that in the back.
Yeah.
It's like kind of referencing everything that's in his environment. I think, for the Pietà, for example, what was so great about that is Zach, my husband, draped that on the spot on Sasha, like in that moment. So
Wow.
Sasha showed up bare, and Zach took chiffon and just in about 20 minutes wrapped the whole thing around her. Sasha brought some crazy headpiece from her closet, and they called me to set. And, they originally had me wearing something to be concealed, and I just said screw it, let's just get this shot, and I took my pants off and I wrapped myself, and that part kind of felt like dance to me, creating an image and creating shape, and I loved it. I loved being in that moment. And the other bits, when I was in the void and all that, like they just put me in a black room and turned the camera on, and I just went. It was really just kind of me exploring the space and just going wherever it went. So that really was like a dance actually for me. It was very physical the way I performed that. And I think that was one of my stronger points, I think, in terms of how I approached it. Because I went in as a dancer, in that way, where I just said to myself, like, this is a psychotic moment, and a lot has to be told through the body. Some people have been like, oh, are your eyes CGI'd and all these things, and no, that like everything was very raw. But I viewed it like movement, which it was. That's what it was.
So for a dancer, because you talk about movement a lot, you talk about the freedom of the body, and this is how I see it. It's the utmost freedom of the body. I feel like dancers defy gravity in a way. So when there is a scene and you're strapped down to a gurney, does this constrict even your perform? Like, what does this does to a dancer? You know what I mean? Because for me, the ultimate freedom is a dancer, kind of like floating, defying gravity, going everywhere with his body. And then you have this dancer in a very restricted scene. How do you deal with that? And how does it affect you?
Well, the freedom that you see in dance is a myth because it's actually very restrictive, because although it looks light and balanced and free, there's a huge amount of physicality involved. So you're actually very much trapped in your body that you have to train to look free. So I always found something that I didn't enjoy about dancing was how difficult it was. And I actually always felt very claustrophobic in repertoire that I performed because it was so physical. So all of that like gravity defying movement that you described is actually, like, for me personally, I never felt that freedom. So it's like you're in the same way you're getting lines in dance, you get lines, you get choreography, you get a set amount of things. You're not allowed to really go. You have more freedom as an actor because you have your lines, but how they're expressed can be different every single time. The musicality can be different every time. And in dance, it's much more structured. You have a tempo, you have an orchestra, you have your mark, you have your costume. Everything has to be a specific way. And, you don't get to be involved in character development. 99% of the time in the repertoire that I danced, there was no character. It was just steps. It's up to the audience to decide like what that narrative is. So I found being strapped in a chair much more liberating than dancing and jumping around on a stage in Lincoln Center, to be honest.
No, that's an answer I wasn't expecting, but it's awesome. It kind of like changes the perspective in my head. Wow. Okay, there's another myth that I have about dance, or it's not a myth, it's how I see it. I think dance, like there is a scene that is really violent in this film where there's like a fight and something. And for me, sometimes I feel like dance is kind of violent. When you see dancer's body afterward, there's a lot of violence there. So it's so easy in my head that dancers can actually play action movies. They really would get along with the choreography. They would be so good at it. So is there violence in dance? Because this scene was really good. I liked it. I liked even the way that you performed the fight itself.
Thank you. Uh, I think that first of all, I would love to be in some action movies because I've done a lot of stage combat, and I'd done Mercutio and I had a double dagger and a saber and, had to do all kinds of crazy things. I worked on that for 6 months with a gentleman who I think was the trainer for Lord of the Rings at some point. And, so I had my fair share of stage combat experience. I think, yeah, the violence and dance that you're describing, I think is just kind of the physicality, like the sheer might of dance is so, in a way, like just when your body wants to go one way, it has to go another. And there is a degree of, I guess, the word lightly violence in that because you're constantly battling yourself and fighting things. And, I could see that. I do think that there's a lot of humility and grace behind dance too, because you do have to surrender your body to what you're in service of, the steps, the music, the audience. Um, but yeah, I think that scene, that violent scene in particular, that really stemmed from the research of the punk scene for me. And like I said, I had spent a lot of time looking at hardcore punk and mosh pits. So there's a lot of actual punk moves that I'm using in that. And I just kind of, I watched even the fights, in these punk scenes. And, punk guys like dance, and women, and there's like a movement quality that they have. And yeah, I didn't find that too dissimilar from dance in some way, and for ballet, and I just kind of integrated that, and it just happened. I didn't think about it too much, like that scene was there. It was 2 in the morning. There were 100 extras. I was angry and I was tired, and there was a lot going on. So in a lucky way, like I said before, all these scenes just kind of happened. It was just
Hmm.
the circumstances were set up and the worlds were very vivid. It wasn't like a blue screen or anything. Everything was there, and it felt aggressive. And there was an actual punk band going and playing and screaming, and all these people I didn't know pushing me, and and just naturally, I felt that it was all there. Anyways, that's not your question, but
No,
somewhat of it.
I love the reminiscence. It definitely answers my question. Like I love the idea of the ordering chaos in a certain way. So I kind of like saw it in the scene, and this is how I felt it too. So yeah, definitely. Okay, so I heard that you love the scene of the hypnosis, but is there another favorite scene of yours? And is there a scene that you felt was too difficult? Like even for you, I feel like you can endure a lot, but there is a scene that you felt drained emotionally and physically after, like you just had to shut off.
Um, I shot a movie the day after I finished Catharsis that was really, really dark. Um,
Oh, okay.
and
I'm
I kind of, I'm used to it. Like I have to say, I think I feel very lucky and fortunate that I had the career that I had and danced as much as I danced in the company that I danced for. New York City Ballet is the most performing company in the world. We have the most repertoire in the world. I was on stage 6 days a week. I was in rehearsals from 10 to 6 every day. I performed every night and anywhere between 1 and 3 ballets. And, I just had my fair share of hard work. So, to be fair, this was like really nice for me, because there's, like I said before in a previous question, there's a lot more freedom for an actor. There's no right way, like I don't know. I feel like you can have as much technique as you want, but from what I'm learning, it's just kind of you deal with what you got, it's right there in front of you and you just handle it. And I was definitely exhausted, but that's what it was, and I'm always tired. So,
You're
and
used to
I
being
don't,
tired, I think.
yeah, I didn't find it difficult, I didn't find it draining. I think I'm figuring out that it's not it's not real, like it's realistic and it's happening when it's happening, but I can easily step out of it and see that there's cameras and people standing behind. It's not like I'm lost in the space and, you know, I forgot that Debbie Harry or this aunt is actually a punk queen, like so
Yeah.
I had a lot of support on set. I think people really had my best interest and people really felt, I definitely was in my character and I really respecting my character and like he was questionable. It's definitely like a dark guy. So it was hard to carry space for him. But yeah, I had a lot of support. It was okay. It was once we said cut, it was, it took a little bit of time to shake it off, but it came off soon enough.
Okay, so you mentioned another film that you shot. Can you tell us anything about this other film?
I did a short with this Georgian director named Tati Baramia. I think it's called In the Best Interest of Children. Don't quote me on that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot the title. It's in some festivals. Um, I have a couple exciting projects coming up. I am shooting two films this summer, both shorts, but both featured roles, and I'm very excited because I think they're very natural progressions from where I came from with Catharsis, and I definitely see myself in this independent film category. I think I like playing morally questionable characters and physical characters. I think that's my strength. And I'm also really studying film at the moment more than ever and realizing that so many of the greatest performances had very, very little dialogue. It was so much about the physical structure of the character. So I'm feeling very excited about that because now it's a little bit more clear to me than it was a year ago of how I can transfer my goods from the ballet to film and hopefully stage. So I'm working on some theater. I've got a lot in the pot. It'll unveil itself naturally, but there's a good strategy.
Definitely. And I'll keep following you to see everything that you do in the future.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
really
you.
amazing talking to you, Harrison. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Of course. Thank you so much.